Hello, my name is Fatima Hassan. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. And today I will be presenting my project, which is based on the amalgamation of textile techniques, architecture, and material exploration in the walled city of Lahore. One of the densest and bustling communities in the heart of Lahore, which is said to never sleep, is the walled city of Lahore. It is also one of the oldest settlements dating back to the subcontinent. It is known for its art, architecture, and cultural significance passed through generation of artisans in the locality. People of the walled city take pride in their tradition and their craft. And one of the most notable influences in the artistic landscape of the walled city comes from textiles. And it can be seen featured in many forms of art and architecture throughout its history. These techniques are observed in embroidery, weaving, handicrafts, fabrics, carpets, and even architectural details that could be found on heritage buildings. And it is very well appreciated in the community. As you can see in the video, you can see embroidery and weaving and handicrafts. Apart from its textile and cultural significance, the dense locality features mixed-use tall buildings spread widely and connected through narrow and dark passageways, where children find it very hard to play, and where light does not enter, creating various problems for the young inhabitants of the locality, including health and safety risk. And so my main stakeholders for this project are the children of the walled city. During one of my visits, I met many children who told me that they don't feel at home due to lack of social spaces like parks. But one particular group of boys left me with a comment that stuck to me, suggesting that they don't even have a place where they could cry in peace due to their living conditions at homes. They have no privacy, no place that they can call their own. And this interaction deeply influenced my observation and direction of the project. My research for this project starts by looking into the influence of textiles in the walled city that it has throughout its existence. I narrowed down 5 textile techniques that are widely used, including looping, knotting, crocheting, linking, and knitting. And I thoroughly investigate their architectural capabilities by model making and evaluating their pros and cons in terms of their density variations, structural capabilities, elasticity, flexibility, versatility, and narrow down the technique that was giving me most out of it, which was knitting. Sorry. So since knitting was not only allowing me various kinds of density variations, as you can see on the screen, but it was actually flexible in terms of its elasticity, and it was allowing me bending of forms. It was also flexible in terms of exploring different materials through knitting, which was very important to me since my project is about material exploration of materials that could be found in the walled city. Now that I had my technique sorted, I started exploring the site and narrowed down the materials on the site that I would be able to use, and that could be found in scrapped or in abundance. That included acrylic wool that could be found in abundance from thrift stores on the site, bendable metal wires from dumpsters, cane and bamboo residue that could be discarded from bamboo chick factories that were there were a lot of factories like those on the site, and my exploration of the materials in terms of the selected textile technique, knitting starts. So my idea was that I'm going to explore all my materials that can be found over here in abundance and that are very sustainable. And I would knit them, since that is the technique of textile that I have narrowed down, that I think is very capable of providing me with what I was hoping to get from my exploration. So my first material exploration is bamboo. Here I explored knitting thread through bamboos and allowing bamboos to assemble accordingly into a flat surface that could be now folded to some extent after they had been assembled. I also looked into how various pressure points could create rigid forms out of it. And another way to assemble the bamboos would be maybe without threads, but just mathematical permutations of pressure points within its assemblage, giving a random form every time I would assemble it. My next material is cane. It's again a very breathable material. In order to look into its architectural structural capabilities, I integrated cane with bamboo, so I could get even more stable of a structure from a structural point of view. I close its form with a structural membrane of a bamboo around it, and that would make the form even more stable. My next material of exploration was metal. I've created an enclosed knitted globe out of metal in order to see how density variations could be uh, allowed in the knitted globe without disrupting the knitting process. Once it's been knitted into any kind of a shape, you could have it become very flexible. It allows protrusion even if it gets better with varying forms of density. So you have varying forms of density in this knitted piece, and it could still protrude itself. Now we integrate acrylic wool with the mesh knitted out of metal, and that makes the structure even more stable and flexible and still looks very breathable. Next, we have acrylic wool. There's a lot that we can do with acrylic wool. We can fold it, join it seamlessly, vary its openings when joining it. We can split it and join it back. That could create different kinds of openings. We can vary its opening densities. We can, like over here, we can vary its knit densities. We can allow flexibility and stretching it to determine density variation, concluding that densities would be denser further from the pressure points of the flexible body and then vice versa. We can integrate it with metal wires and then bend the acrylic wool into curvilinear shapes that are stable. We can integrate it with bamboos and bend it into a rigid yet stable structure. We can protrude them by using flexibility and maybe threads and creating different kinds of forms. Next, I introduced resin into my exploration by protruding my acrylic wool with a mold here. Here I've used a balloon and cured it with resin. And upon drying, it would allow the acrylic wool to retain its shape even after I remove the balloon. And lastly, I've done the same process, but instead of using resin, I've used like a spread of concrete, and my fabric would still retain its shape even after drying out. Here are the conclusions drawn from the material investigation, which concludes that acrylic wool is going to be my main material of use, and the other materials are going to be integrated with the acrylic wool according to their strengths explored above. Now, in order to truly understand the intricacy of all the materials, all the acrylic wool things that I've explored, I explore all the types of knits in the acrylic wools and evaluate them on the basis of their flexibility, openings, permeability, and density variations. I've color-coded all the types of knit over here, like as you can see, and I've graphed them according to their capabilities and evaluated them in accordance with each other to determine their strengths and weaknesses so I can use them in my final design respectively. Following that, I moved to my form explorations leading to my design development. I knit a fabric that has honeycomb knit that allows flexibility to stretch out the molds. So I've decided on honeycomb knit because of the exploration that I've done previously with the types of knits. And that would allow me to stretch out the molds. Again, I'm using a balloon over here. And the pearl knit would retain the shape of the fabric. And then when I'd cure them with resin and take out the inflatables, the thing would still retain its shape and it would create a form like this in my final design that could maybe be used to create shells for the structure that allow maybe indirect light in my final form, something like this. So next, I explore the form with metal mesh integrated with acrylic wool and cure it with resin, which could maybe, yes, so which could maybe be used as columns that could support the shell of the structure and seamlessly blend with the ground and the shell itself of the design. The ground could be made with garter knit, and garter knit could be maybe then integrated with metal wires, made it into, then assembled into like a very dynamic shape, and then I could cure it with concrete like this, and maybe have it looks something like this in my design, the ground, cured with concrete. And finally, the bamboo and cane exploration could work together to make a bridge that connects all the buildings above the narrow streets like this. So here's a model that seamlessly blends all the types of knits and prototypes the design. And the resin coating would make the structure waterproof. So the entire structure would be coated with resin after it's been completed, the shell, the columns, and the ground. And it would provide indirect light that would protect the users from the harsh light or the harsh climate of Lahore. Here are the colors that I've used for my design. They're very vibrant and lively that blend contemporarily with the context of the walled city. Okay, so back to my site. In order to understand where I would place the intervention, as you know that my site is the walled city of Lahore, and here are some observations that So here are some observations that I've narrowed down from the walled city of Lahore, including lack of spaces to play for children and narrow streets among tall buildings, making inadequate sunlight exposure in the streets, making 1 out of 10 children in the walled city vitamin D deficient, which was one of the things that was very concerning for me when I looked into the site a little closer. It has limited social spaces, obstructed sidewalks, traffic congestion, and safety concern due to dimly lit streets. And with that, the area faces environmental challenges like the UHI effects due to its dense buildings and narrow streets, trapping heat and giving rise to the canyon effect. The vertical densification also blocks the airflow in the narrow streets, due to which I project my vision towards the roof of the locality, where the harsh light could be indirected through the design that I am implementing on it. And the wind circulation would allow maybe a very breathable space for the neglected children of the walled city, since it's all being made with like this mesh kind of a design. Of course, it wasn't as simple as placing it anywhere on the roof, since the residential roofs are used for various tasks like washing, drying, socializing, and sleeping, and I couldn't disrupt that. Hence, I analyzed my site in terms of its residential commercial buildings along with its circulatory paths. And I narrowed down the paths around my site to understand the circulation of children. And then I finally decided to use this as my site that features a residential community around a commercial block. And the roof of the commercial block sits redundant with no activity on it. This is where I decided to put my intervention and connect it with bamboo and cane bridges with the residences. So the darker portion is actually the commercial roofs, and the lighter portions are the residential roofs, and they could be connected through the bamboo bridges. And also, one of the reasons that I decided to use this was because the roofs are literally redundant in the commercial blocks. Nobody is using them. Nobody can even access them because the floors of the commercial buildings are actually filled with the warehouses, and people can't access the roofs from there. So this was just an artistic vision of how I would like to connect all of this together. In order to place my intervention, I grid out my commercial block in order to understand its retaining walls. However, my structure is very light. I still place the columns on the retaining walls of the commercial block. And so this is how it would be connected. And this is it. It could be knitted by the artisans of the community itself, and the colors blends with the landscape of the beautiful heritage buildings on the site, giving the children a sense of belonging, a place where they can call their own, a place where they can call home. And these threads of resilience not only knit together the rich heritage of the walled city, but also weave a fabric of fun and freedom for its youngest inhabitants. Thank you.